In this recording, I'm going to be talking about contemporary issues within sport, in particular football. Sport is such a huge part of today's modern society. For example, events such as the World Cup and the Olympics brings all sorts of different countries together through the love and passion of sport. However, due to the sporting world getting so much publicity on the media, for example, this is naturally going to lead to a rise in issues that come along with that. The first issue I'm going to be talking about is violence. I'm going to be going through several factors which may explain a bit better why footballers are violent. The first factor I'm going to be talking about is competitiveness. Ultimately, I believe without a bit of competition, football wouldn't be the game that it is. Players are there because they want to win. For example, if they were playing a tough competition, then this may increase their violence levels because it's an important game and they need to win. The next factor I'm going to be talking about is passion. These top of the league football players are there because they are passionate about their sport. However, too much passion may lead to violence. They get too passionate about what they're doing and then their arousal levels get too high. This then leads to frustration that they can only take out on other players. So I believe arousal levels has a huge impact on why players are violent within football. The next factor I'm going to be talking about is disagreement with decisions. For example, this could be a decision that the ref has made which the players believe that this is bias. So then the players take out their anger and frustration on the opposing team. This can hugely impact the game. If the team players believe that the ref is being biased, then this is going to change the players' attitude towards the whole game. This can lead to a full 90 minutes of one team being very angry and very frustrated towards the ref and the other team, which can increase their violence levels. The next factor I'm going to be talking about is instrumental aggression. This is aggression where it's not intentional. For example, both players have gone in for the tackle and have ended up hitting each other. The main intention is not to hurt the other player, but just to tackle. This type of aggression may be seen as intentional aggression, when this is just not the case. The next factor I'm going to be talking about is language. When playing a match, the coaches and parents may shout out things such as "be more aggressive." They don't mean this in a way of being violent to the other team, but the use of language makes it seem that way. This could then lead to the players listening to that language being used and acting on it. This then leads to hostile aggression. Hostile aggression is where the players purposely tries to hurt the other team player out of pure anger. This is the difference between hostile aggression and assertion. Assertion is just good play. Next, I'm going to be talking about reactive aggression. This is where the player uses violence as a way of reacting to another team player. An example of this may be where someone from the opposing team has come and stood near another player, and instead of them just moving away or getting into another space, that player then is violent to that other player out of just as a reaction, out of pure frustration. The final factor I'm going to be talking about, explaining as to why football players are violent, is status of competition or match. For example, if players are playing the Premier League final match, then their arousal levels are going to be higher, the stress is going to be higher, there's going to be potential scouting and sponsorship there. So all in all, the players are going to be feeling the pressure. This can lead to an increase in violence from the players, especially more reactive aggression. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is what are the possible ways of avoiding violence from players. I think this includes just making stricter punishments then this will decrease the amount of violence that players use within the game. For example, if strict bans are put in place and they're as straightforward as if you act a certain way within a match or outside, you will get banned. Fines the same principle. If you act a certain way or do this out of the guidelines, then you will pay a financial fee. Especially top of the league players, they are earning a large amount of money. So if you strip a large amount of money away from them, then they probably won't do it again. And even suspensions, if they're strict enough to say, well, if you decided to act like that, then we are going to completely suspend you from playing from our team, then the players are going to think twice about their actions before they do it. For me, this picture is very powerful. Two football players clearly being extremely violent to each other, yet a little boy looks so happy to see one of his idols. This is just one example of how being a role model is so important. Them violent actions are making it look like it's okay for them to be doing that, which has such a bad influence on younger people who look up to them. He doesn't care about them having a fight, he is just happy to see his idol. I think this is becoming such a huge issue in today's sporting society, because it's becoming less about the sport and the love of sport, and it's becoming more about the issues that come with sport, and I think it just sets such a bad influence. Next, I'm going to be talking about football's history to maybe explain a bit more as to why. Mob football was a game played in 1179 London, where two villages would compete in a very violent game. There was little respect for people or property. It traditionally comes from a lower class background, so could explain why football has such a culture. The culture in modern day Britain, where it's the typical middle-aged, bold, drunken man, rightly or wrongly. Mob football would literally consist of people jumping all over each other, tackling each other just to get the ball over to their side. There was no rules. It was free for everyone to join in, and lots of people got injured and hurt. It's said to be the ancestor of the modern game football. Moving on, the next thing I'm going to be talking about is spectator violence and how this has impacted football. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is spectator violence and how this has impacted football. Football is known for its extremely enthusiastic spectators. Some may argue without such a large following, football wouldn't be the same. Now I'm going to be going into detail about the possible reasons why spectators at football matches are so violent towards each other. Firstly, this may be because their team is losing. Lots of spectators are very passionate about their team, and to go to a match and see them lose can be very hard to deal with. Their team may not be playing as well as they usually do, and to be a spectator and have to sit back and watch this unfold and not be able to do anything about it can be very frustrating and could lead to them being very violent. The next factor I'm going to be talking about is they're playing against their rival team. Before the match has even started, the spectators are going to know that their team is playing against their rivals. This means as a spectator there's already going to be a level of hatred/suspense about the other team being there. This could then easily lead to fights and disagreements and the levels of violence being higher than at other games. The next factor that may cause spectator violence is because they want to fight. Their everyday job might be boring, so they use matches as a way to release inner anger and de-stress, so overall use it as a way of escaping. Not only this, but due to such large crowds, if people are having a fight/disagreement, they are not going to stand out compared to if they were at a small local match. They act as if they are invisible. They think no one else will think anything of their actions. The final factor I'm going to be talking about is the spectators being under the influence of drugs or alcohol. If spectators are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, then this may heighten any feeling of anger. People may drink too much and end up being completely out of control of what they are doing. If the team are losing or the ref is saying things that the spectators don't agree with, then this is going to heighten their anger and violence. There's also something called the social learning theory that gives us a bit more of an understanding of why spectators are so violent. Social learning theory is where someone copies someone else's behaviour that is being reinforced. This is the idea that if loads of people are doing it, then someone else will feel as it's acceptable to do it because they almost feel anonymous and that no one will even question their behaviour, rightly or wrongly. Finally, what are the solutions to spectator violence? What are the possible solutions that we can put in place to minimise spectator violence? So I have do it at difficult times during the day, e.g. 10 a.m. This means that less people are going to drink so early in the day. Certain groups of people may not go due to them being at work. Prevent the amount of alcohol, so put limits on the amount that people are allowed to drink. This minimises alcoholic violence and fights. Escort away fans by the police and make sure they are managed correctly. This could be separating the two teams, making that there's no rivalry fights. Stricter rules / punishments, for example, staying the night in a cell, bans, criminal record or a fine. This really makes people think about their violent actions and that it's not okay. Next, I have also put up-to-date security, e.g. CCTV, to be able to catch the people who did it. Often at these events, people get drunk, they have fights, they think it's acceptable and they get away with it. But if we put in CCTV and catch these people and put in stricter punishments and rules, then they maybe think twice and think that actually it's not okay to do that. Increase the amount of police force there and to educate, having positive role models that are not going to act in inappropriate ways. So for example, if a dad is taking his little boy to his first football match, don't be like everyone else and be shouting and violent and swearing. Teach his son to be, polite and not act in such a violent way can have a massive impact on the next generation of footballers. Overall, as a summary, I think that violence in sport is definitely still around in today's modern society. I think that there can be things put in place to stop it, but I think it's always going to be the nature of the sport due to its history and its culture.